And as an Indigenous person, one of my goals is to bring the positive aspects of my culture into Western cultures, so that trans women and trans people are portrayed more positively in their communities.
Young and Indigenous Podcast is an outlet for people to know about Indigenous knowledge, storytelling, and history. Through our youthful journeys as Indigenous people, through these stories, young people and elders share their experiences with us. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this.
About to tell some red stories. Stay tuned.
Yay Podcast!
Hello, my name is Bella, and I come from the Lummi Nation, and I've been part of this podcast since we started it in 2019. And the Young and Indigenous Podcast is about Indigenous knowledge, storytelling, and history. So it's for people to just learn, or it's just an outlet to learn about, Indigenous people and who we are and where we come from.
And hello, my name is Haley Garrow. I'm also come from the Lummi Nation, and I'm also First Nations Huu-ay-aht from Vancouver Island. I've been a part of the podcast team for a little over a year now. Still kind of finding my footing in it, still getting comfortable interviewing and everything. But we're so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm Roy. I've been working here for like a year now. Yeah. I'm from Nooksack. Sorry, I'm from Nooksack, Bellingham, Washington. Yeah.
The way we found you was me and Roy were at the Toronto International Film Festival, and we were there for the opening night of Next Goal Wins because we have our own small little film festival that we do here at our company called Treaty Day Film Festival in remembrance of our treaty signing. And
that's how we connected with you.
Yeah. We ended up seeing your film, and we were just like really inspired. And as soon as the film ended, I looked at Haley and I was like, we need to get her on the podcast.
I was like, girl, boss, we have to meet her. We have to talk to her.
Like, this has to happen. We manifested it.
Yay, and now we're here.
Now we're here. Yeah, we start out with just letting you introduce yourself by saying who you are and where you come from.
Okay. Talo for everyone. My name is Jaiyah Saelua. Born and raised here on the beautiful island of American Samoa. I'm indigenous to the Pacific region, specifically the Samoan Islands. I have this pretty cool platform that was created in 2011 when FIFA recognized me as the first out transgender woman to play in a FIFA sanctioned tournament. The platform was amplified by the documentary called Next Goal Wins, which has been made into a full-length feature film by Oscar-winning director of Pacific descent as well, Taika Waititi, which is set to release on November 17th. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, we're glad to have you.
So exciting. All right. We would love to hear about your home country, Samoa, and what you love most about your culture.
Okay. So the Samoan culture is many things, but the foundation of the culture is respect. And a lot of our nature, the way of life of the Samoan people, and a lot of the people in the Pacific region in general, the foundation of our cultures is respect. And that includes respect for Fa'afafine. I myself I identify as a Samoan Fa'afafine before I identify as a transgender woman. Mainly because I have a place in my culture and in my community already set aside by our ancestors. And the beauty of it is we're still a recognized identity. We're still celebrated. We still have roles and responsibilities culturally and traditionally. I think that's one of the biggest differences with that of what Western cultures or societies would call transgender women or transgender people. And until recently, transgender people haven't been portrayed in a very positive light since they first got publicized in, what was it, the 1950s and 60s. So a lot of their existence centers around negative connotations, and that's completely different from my existence, my experiences growing up, and the realities of Fa'afafine, the Fa'afafine identity. So that's the significance of my identity as a Fa'afafine person. And the word Fa'afafine is an umbrella term in itself. Um, it basically refers to someone who was born having assigned the male gender at birth, but lives otherwise. And the reverse of that would be a Fa'atama, which is someone who was assigned the female gender at birth, but also lives otherwise.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and the literal translation of the word is of Fa'afafine is in the manner of a woman. So we understand as Fa'afafine that we are not women, and it might sound controversial when you look at it from an outside perspective, but in the manner of a woman suggests that we understand and accept that we are not women. But the only reason we accept and understand that in a beautiful way is because we, as Fa'afafine, we, like I said, we have a place in our societies. Yeah. I'm proud to be Fa'afafine, and I'm working on helping to, so the platform that was created in 2011 and amplified by the documentary helped me realize that there is a need for advocacy for the trans identity. And as an Indigenous person, one of my goals is to bring the positive aspects of my culture into Western cultures, so that trans women and trans people are portrayed more positively in their community.
Yes. Very cool. Wow.
It's a lot of work, but
you kind of just answered my next question. I was about to ask what Fa'afafine meant to you, but you just answered that very beautifully. Thank you.
It's a lot more complex when it's simple to us because we live it, but it's complex to outside communities and people. There's this beautiful concept called the Wa'awhiloa'i. It's the contextual space between any two people or groups of people in Samoan culture, where, because we have our set roles, cultural roles and traditional roles, we respect the space between me and someone. So there is a space between me and my sisters, me and my mother, where our mannerisms change depending on who we're interacting with, and it's pretty sacred in the Samoan culture, and yeah, I think it's just beautiful that we understand those spaces.
So you talked about finding your identity, as Fa'afafine, and like within your own culture. What sort of advice would you give to Indigenous youth who are searching for their identity within their own cultures?
So it was more of a living experience for me rather than a finding experience.
Okay.
I grew up in a community that was already very nurturing and supportive of people like myself. So that would be my privilege as a Fa'afafine woman. And I understand that the world outside of mine has changed a lot, and Western influence and the power of colonization still has an effect on a lot of Indigenous identities and cultures. And I like to use the terms that decolonization of our minds, because the youth, if anyone, the youth are always affected negatively because of this. So I think my advice would be more for Indigenous people rather than the Indigenous youth who are seeking to find their places in their communities. A word of advice for them would be, go back to your roots, go back to your traditional values where everyone had a place and a role. And because when I speak about Fa'afafine identity, it's not exclusive to our culture, because a lot of indigenous cultures around the world have already, for centuries, even before the white man started to navigate or discover the world. A lot of indigenous cultures already had roles and responsibilities and places for their respective third genders, for lack of a better understanding of other cultures. I think Two-Spirit is specific to a lot of Native cultures, Native American, North American cultures. So so just a word of advice for Indigenous peoples around the world: have more pride in your identities and in your bloodline even, and get back to your roots, where our third gender communities had places and traditional roles and responsibilities.
A beautiful answer.
No,
You have
seriously.
such an amazing way of just explaining it, and love it.
So, other than being a superstar advocate, I think you're also a superstar soccer player. Could you tell us a little bit about how you started your soccer journey and where you are now with it?
So again, circling back to the identity of Fa'afafine, because we're nurtured in this way, all of us feel that we're in whatever we decide to do in life, it's easy for us to pursue. So I at 11 years old, you don't really, like, for me personally, I never really had a plan for life. I mean, who does at that age? I was attending a private school in here in American Samoa called the South Pacific International Christian Center, and we didn't have any sports opportunities. For us, it was, I mean, and that's pretty much the case for a lot of private schools here in American Samoa. There were things like the math competition and the science fair and speech festival, and the only actual competitive things that would be considered kind of a sport is chess competition. So after the 31-0 loss against Australia, the Football Federation wanted to approach development in a completely different way. Instead of trying to develop adult athletes, they figured the best thing they can do is develop youth, start at the grassroots level, and then by the time they're adults, they're a lot better players. So I was a product of that initiative. A team was offered to, we were offered a spot in the new private school league. And that year we won the championship title. It was a co-ed team, so it was very appealing to me that I could play alongside my girl classmates or peers, and we were playing against other teams, other private schools who were both boys and girls. So because we won the championship title our first year, and I was named the island-wide MVP, I figured, why not pursue or make it something that's a lifestyle rather than a hobby. Football became my life, and by age 14, I was drafted to the senior national team, not the under 16 or the under 23 or the under 19.
That's
Senior
amazing.
national team. And I was playing alongside like mid 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. Yeah, and that was the beginning of my soccer career. And here I am.
Was it scary to be playing with people so much older than you?
Not really. I think the biggest concern for me was playing against because I was developing at a young age, we were pretty much the same skill-wise and technically with my teammates. I think the scary thing for me was playing against other countries who were a lot older and more skilled than any of us were.
Awesome.
I've grown to be a lot more confident on the pitch, and now as one of the senior members on the team, on the national team, after more than 20 years with the national team, I have a lot more confidence, and I have a more of a leadership role in the team. 2019 was my first year as a captain.
That's
As
cool.
you should.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem for American Samoa is there's no real incentive to keep our seasoned athletes here in American Samoa. We're not really a professional federation, and our competitions are every 4 years.
Yeah.
And by that time, some of my teammates would have already joined the military or have gone off to to the mainland to seek higher education or better opportunities.
Yeah.
And then you're such an inspiring advocate for transgender rights and just creating an inclusive space in the sports world. And I know I've read some of your articles about just all the work that you're doing in that area. Could you talk more about the advocacy work that you're up to?
Yeah. So advocacy in the beginning, when the platform was first created, it wasn't something that I was interested in. I had no passion to do it, no interest at all. So it was kind of a responsibility that was thrown on me because I was the first out transgender to play in a FIFA sanctioned tournament. I was asked to, give speeches and sit on panels and talking about my experience. And to this day, I'm still learning, and I still don't find myself as passionate about it as I am about soccer. But there is a need for it. Clearly, there's, as the years went by, I realized that was a need for advocacy for trans people in general, but more so trans people in sport. And I find myself kind of caught between two worlds because yes, I'm a transgender person and I play sports and I support the trans people finding spaces in sport where they can express themselves, express their passions and be themselves. But I'm also a trans woman who plays on the men's side. So a lot of times I feel like I don't have the right to speak on that issue because it's not real to my experience, and I haven't faced any backlash because of the fact that I play on the men's side. So I'm still trying to bridge that. It's so difficult to bridge that the narratives, but it's a work in progress, and I think at the very least my visibility has some sort of influence in the narrative. FIFA has become more inclusive of myself and of LGBTQI plus, or SOGI as we use in the Pacific region. I'll get to that after. They've been more inclusive, and they put me on the cover of the FIFA magazine, September 2016 issue. I've sat on panels that help choose the FIFA Diversity Award annually, and I was the first. More recently, I was one of 800 delegates to be invited by the president of FIFA himself to the 2023 FIFA Women's Football Convention. It continues to provide spaces where I feel included, and there's still a lot of work to be done in the IOC and the NCAA especially. Can I just touch on the SOGI?
Of course,
Yes.
of course,
Yes.
yeah.
Please.
Not to make it a rainbow versus SOGI thing or I don't want it to shine that kind of light into on the differentiation between these two acronyms.
Yeah.
But LGBTQI plus is the way we see it in the region, and we talked about this at one of the ILGA conferences, Oceania conferences that we had. It's very specific to L for this identity, GBTQI plus, very individual but put together. Whereas SOGI refers to sexual orientation, gender identity / expressions, where it's not specific, more general, and also more inclusive of indigenous identities, like because a lot of Fa'afafine don't identify as gay or as trans. And so in the rainbow spectrum, a lot of indigenous identities don't feel included in that spectrum, but SOGI allows all identities, including indigenous identities, to be included. So in the Oceania region, we use SOGI a lot more.
Oh,
Wow, that is cool. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Next Goal Wins. We've talked about it. There's the documentary, there's the Taika. Could you talk some more, could you tell us about that whole entire experience? Like, how does it feel to see yourself on screen?
When Steve Jameson and Mike Brett, the creators of the documentary, filmed in 2011, cool story. The essence or the reason behind them coming all the way from London to American Samoa was to film because they heard about the 31-0 loss already. And so in 2011, they had the idea to come to American Samoa and shoot snippets of why American Samoa, as one of the worst teams in the world, kept introducing teams on the international stage. That was the reason behind there, and it was because we love the game. It was for the love of the game, and that's what they wanted to captivate in their project, to take back to England and help introduce that back into the English Football Association. Because now football becomes a lot more about business, how much you can make, what club offers you the best, gives you the best offer, and it's all about money and things like that. And we forget about the grassroots level, why we started to play in the beginning is because we love the sport. And that's what it was for us. But as they were filming in 2011, they started to realize that different characters were becoming visible, and like my own character, like Nikki Salapu, the goalkeeper's character, like Ramin Ott, who left the military to play for the national team again to help us, improve our standings. As they were filming, they realized that different characters were showing themselves to could create a very interesting documentary. So that's what it became. They went from filming little snippets far away from the team, having individual interviews with the team, to within a day they came back with gear, a lot more gear, and they were running with us, and they were trying to create more better content for what was now going to become a documentary. So yeah, that was the beginning of it, and none of us knew that it was going to be as huge a project as it turned out to be in 2014 when the world premiere of Next Goal Wins was at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York City. We had the outdoor screenings, and there were about 2,000 people out in the cold with their coats, everyone there to watch the movie. And then in 2016, I get an email that Taika Waititi was interested in recreating this our story into his own version. Kind of, we call it the Taika hybrid version.
I bet that was a crazy email to get.
And then so we agreed in 2016. I'm not a film junkie, so I don't know. I watch films. I love to watch films, but I don't study I don't go deep into who the directors are or the actors are. So meeting with Taika in 2016, I had no idea. That's the honest truth, is I didn't know who he was, his caliber. So it wasn't until 2019 when I got invited to set to help. To just as a guest.
Mhm.
I realized how big of a project it was going to be. How many people were involved in who were crew members, who were cast, all the extras, all the equipment, having to pause because a military helicopter was going over the soccer field, that kind of thing. And I finally got to see Hollywood in action. So I sat by Taika while he was doing his thing, directing the movie, and I was so quiet. And he asked, "Are you okay?" And I turned to him. I was like, "Now I'm nervous." The anxiety. So, because it could go both ways. It could be a flop. It could be good. And this was our story. So it was personal to me. And so I became nervous about the project. Thankfully, it turned out to be good. Could have been better, but it for me, what was important is that the essence of the documentary was relayed in the remake. So thankfully, that was Taika was able to do that, and I'm grateful that it was Taika because he's a Pacific person, and because of him, more than 90% of the cast and crew were Pacific Islanders. And so that's one of the beautiful things about this remake. It's by a Pacific Islander, portrayed by Pacific Islanders, portraying a Pacific Island story.
Yeah.
So yeah, celebration for us.
No, big celebration.
No, that's so cool.
Like,
Like, actually,
the way it felt to be sitting in the theater, like watching this premiere, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is so cool.
right.
Right, and it's so surreal for me to watch for the first time someone portraying me. Like who gets to say that, and from coming from a small country, one of the smaller regions too in the world, just these things just don't happen for us, and I mean, American Samoa is so excited. The region is so excited that one of our stories is being portrayed on the Hollywood screen. We see a lot of Pacific Islander representation with little scenes that show a snippet of the culture, but Next Go Wins is all about us, and that's what I love most about this movie, and this retelling of our story.
With like a story that was so, personal to you, what was most important to like be shown on screen? Like, you were there with Taika on set.
Yeah. Like I said, for me was that the essence of the documentary was portrayed in the movie.
Yeah.
So a sense of our Samoan culture, taking athletes back to the grassroots level where it's all about the love of the game, and it's not always about winning. It's about teamwork and camaraderie and stuff like that. And then celebrate a lesson of celebrating diversity and recognizing people for who they are and allowing them to have spaces where they can thrive. So those three things we get from the documentary was also very evident in Next Go Wins, the remake. So that's what was important for me. And then also, secondly, the portrayal of the Fa'afafine identity, because it might be a sensitive topic. Transgenderism might be a sensitive topic, or their portrayal of our realities is very sensitive, and a lot of Kaimana's experiences in the movie might not be accurate in the timeline that it was set, but very accurate in my personal experiences, going through hormone replacement treatment and things like, and having been called your dead name and asked even what's between your legs. Those are real experiences of trans folk, and including that was also a nice little twist on making sure that audiences realize those are the kinds of negative things that we actually go through, and so like portrayal of trans people and of Papakine in their respective lights was also very important to me.
But the next thing I was going to ask was just, what are you up to now? I know you're still playing soccer, right?
Yeah. Oh, I had to make a decision in the last couple of weeks whether to because the team is preparing for the Pacific Games. I had to choose between the Pacific Games or continuing the tour for Next Go Wins, and I chose the latter because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I've already played in 3 different Pacific Games. This would have been my 4th. There's going to be another one in 4 years, so I mean, it was a clear, very obvious decision for me to make. So I'm gonna continue doing promotions for the film and helping people to understand more about my culture and the Fa'afafine identity as I do so. I'm gonna capitalize on this opportunity. But I still do play for the national team, and hopefully by 2027 I can still. I mean, I'm getting too old and I feel it in my legs, but
No.
yeah, I think I can still do it. Yeah.
What messages do you have for Indigenous youth?
Be proud of your identity as Indigenous people. Know that our ancestors had a role and a place for you. So grow up with that confidence, knowing that despite having a lot of our communities having shifted on us, help them to realize that, help them to go back to their roots, be proud and confident in your identities, because it's a major part of who you are, and it creates a platform for you to help the world become a better place.
I love that. That's cool. That's amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to share for?
No, I just really appreciate spaces like this where Indigenous conversations are had between Indigenous peoples, and platforms like this are introduced by, for the most part, our youth. And so thank you for having me on and helping me share in my realities and my experiences as a native Samoan and as a Papakine.
Of course. Thank you for being on. This is actually like so surprising. Like when we cold DM'd you, we didn't expect to get the response.
Me and Roy were just like at breakfast, and I was like, we really want to try to get her, but I'm like, I can't find a contact. I'm like, I think I'm just gonna
Just send it. Hey, what up, y'all? Thanks for tuning into this episode of Young and Indigenous. This episode was produced by Haley Garrow, Roy Alexander, Bella James, and Ellie Smith. Huge thank you to our funders, the Discurin Foundation, the Inatai Foundation, and the Whatcom Community Foundation. Original music in this episode was done by Roy Alexander, Keith Jefferson, and Mark Nichols. Hashka for listening. Later, y'all.